is mine. Don't waste my time.
Surge. A new moon rises. Ningguang water bomb. You on this?
Hear the echoes of the valley. Give up.
Oh, shucky ducky, ladies and gentlemen. Hope you're having a great day today. It's time. With Columbina's release comes the introduction of Lunar Crystallise, and that's something that I wanted to have a look at today. Basically, the idea is that it replaces Hydro Crystallizes, and instead of making shards, you make turrets that will attack enemies if you trigger a reaction enough times. Essentially, each reaction will result in a hit from a turret, but instead we make 3 turrets, and after every third reaction, we will make all 3 turrets attack at once. So it's a bit more of a concentrated wave of damage. This damage of course scales off EM and crit, and like how Lunar Charge works, only 2 of the characters involved with the reaction will really only matter, in that it takes 100% of the strongest damage and 50% of the next strongest damage. Then the other characters only contribute a tiny amount, so at that point it doesn't really matter. So the big thing for me was looking at the interaction between this reaction and a lot of the older but still cool characters. In particular, Lady Ningguang with her big missile spam, the best maid Noelle, Knight of Favonius, Navia with her shotgun and her cannons, and of course also Zhongli and Chiori, who I of course don't have. Okay, let's begin. Ningguang. Initially, I wanted to look at Ningguang's thunderous Lunar Crystallise, specifically a setup in combining Lunar Crystallise and Lunar Charge, or what I would actually start calling LC squared. The first key discovery is that while normal Crystalise reactions have a global 1-second cooldown, Lunar Crystallise does not, which already makes geo interactions a lot more aggressive. When the thundercloud from Lunar Charge hits enemies, it leaves behind a half-unit Electro and half-unit Hydro aura. Applying 1 unit of geo removes the Electro, and due to aura decay, it partially reacts with the Hydro as well. This means a single geo application can immediately trigger both Electro Crystallise and Lunar Crystallise. Practically speaking, this only works if you have Columbina or later Dubai. Without them, you of course won't get the Hydro Crystallise at all. With that established, I tested how this behaves specifically with Ningguang, and this is where things start to fall apart, with a sentence that I never thought I would ever say in my entire life. Ningguang has too much geo application for LC squared. In teams with a second geo, Nefa and Columbina, enemies frequently end up with no aura at all, which will mean that Ningguang's Geo app has nothing to react with. So what is going on? Well, I've actually gone ahead and tabled what Ningguang's Geo app looks like. In particular, we have Ningguang's normal attacks that involve 2 hits, and I can confirm that every third normal attack, provided there's enough Hydro app, will result in the turrets firing. So I'm quite sure the hit timing basically means that clicking her normal attacks functionally has no ICD. Her charge attack has a shared ICD for the entire thing. Ningguang's skill also straight up doesn't have an ICD, I just wish it didn't have a cooldown on energy particles. And of course, Ningguang's ult has a standard ICD. This becomes especially important for her burst. With her J screen active, not only does her burst do double damage, but so does her geo application, increasing the Lunar Crystallise procs, but that would also make the aura loss much more significant. The problem is simple. The 0.5 units of Hydro aura that is left by the Thundercloud reaction simply cannot sustain Ningguang's geo output. The aura gets wiped, there ends up being some downtime, and as a result of that, we have less reactions. So instead of forcing LC squared, the solution is to return to a more standard Lunar Crystallise core with stronger Hydro uptime. I tested solo Hydro Columbina to see if that was enough, mostly because then it would allow for something unhinged like, I don't know, running Sucrose for example, but even her 1 unit Hydro application didn't seem enough. That does mean we need additional off-field Hydro, and I suppose a Hydro-infused Butterfly could be an answer. There is Farina, whose Hydro application is, I think, comparable to Columbina's, just not as regular because Salon Solitaire runs on their own timeline. Instead, I ended up testing a very cursed but functional option, R1 Nilu. We're not using her kit, we're just really using her Hydro Ring, plus her massive HP scaling that pairs well with, of course, her signature weapon, the Key of Kashna suit. This would provide roughly, I think, 200 EM to the entire team, and since my Ningguang has essentially no EM, this is actually a pretty nice buff, at least for the Lunar Crystallise damage. The team does seem to more or less work, although second rotations seem to find themselves with cooldown things, especially with Ningguang's often shorter field time. This does end up forcing more reliance on normal and charge attacks from Ningguang in order to just, I don't know, pass that time, so it is something to keep in mind. However, according to the simulacrum, this setup still underperforms comparing to just simply using Aino. Even at C0, Aino can bring along Ascendant Gleam with Columbina, and that actually seems to provide enough of a boost to the turret damage and of course Columbina's own off-field Lunar Crystallise damage to actually pull ahead. The downside is that we're talking about Aino, whose Hydro application is famously, or I guess infamously, circularly impacted, and since Hydro cannot trigger Lunar Crystallise, she cannot use the Flame Forged Insight effectively, and so because of that I've been running Sacrificial Greatsword on her just to avoid the energy issue. For the second Geo slot, I've basically been using Shillidan a lot, and for the record, Fav Shillidan is pretty much the way to go for all of the teams that I'm going to be talking about in this video. Whilst it may be possible, I think, to actually force some Favs procs via the Lunar Crystallise reaction, it is a bit finicky due to the turrets needing some time to actually build up, so I do think building some crit rate on her is still a really good idea. One more thing, and this also applies to Navia. The nighttime artifact set is actually a lot better because it works with the nearby turrets, which does remove the need to pick up shards or maintain a crystallized shield. So this actually makes this artifact set significantly easier to use because Ningguang and Navia's crystallized shields are famously not all that strong since they don't actually build EM or defense. Based on simulacrum results, the Lunar Crystallise variant with Farina currently appears to be the strongest option that I've seen, so perhaps the answer continues to lie with her. All of this to say, Lunar Crystallise is looking like a buff for Ningguang. Meanwhile, we have Noelle. Noelle is actually in a pretty similar spot. It was rediscovered over the past couple of weeks that her normal attacks from her ult have no ICD. Considering this has, I think, been the case since day one, and with Noelle being such an old character at this point, it would be kind of hilarious if it turns out that this was some kind of 5-year-long plan for Noelle to have this kind of synergy with Lunar Crystallise. So because she doesn't have any ICD in her Geo app, it seems like once again her Geo app is too fast for Lunar Charged Thunderclouds to sustain. Thus, LC squared once again doesn't seem like a particularly good idea for her. So we're back to the double Hydro options, and in this case I have no problem recommending the Farina variant. Now, unlike the Ningguang team with Farina, where we'd have to be bouncing around the various characters for Shillinan's strong single target healing to handle everyone, Noelle's strong team healing pretty much solves that problem. And the double Geo double Hydro team is pretty much the way to go. Naturally, once again, my personal favorite second Geo remains to be Shillinan, but there was the option of C6 Goro that I really wanted to consider, but I don't think he's actually as good as we had hoped he was going to be in this team at least. It turns out, Goro's strength is heavily dependent on how many Geo characters are on the team. In a double Geo team, there would of course be 2. This would of course result in something called the Impregnable buff. The Impregnable buff at C6 is only plus 20% crit damage, as opposed to the Crunch buff that you really want with 3 Geo characters that would give plus 40% crit damage. With Goro's ult, you'd still get the defense percent buff, so that's actually good for Noelle, and with enough ER and Fav, she can be a decent enough battery. However, in the simulacrum, it does seem like my C2 Fav Shillidan is still significantly a stronger option. Not only does her Res Shred result in 20k turret hits versus 18k with C6 Goro in a team like this, but the overall DPS is jumping from 60k to upwards of 90k. Oh, and while we're on the topic of the simulacrum, it appears that this Lunar Noelle team with Farina is actually stronger than what I could do with a proper DPS team. So if you stick Farina on the team, it's likely that Columbina will be the only non-cry character. We'll just have to see if Ilua actually can do something interesting, but from what I've heard so far, this seems unlikely. So as much as I'd like to say it's time to run the non-cry DPS set, I think I'll just stick with Marechaussee. You'd only be getting 15% crit rate anyway from the Nordcry DPS set because, once again, only one Nordcry character. So instead, we're going to be sacrificing that and 80 EM for plus 36 crit rate and some normal and charge attack damage percent from Marechaussee. At least for me, I was able to get past 100k DPS, so that's pretty exciting. And finally, Navia. Because Ningguang and Noelle seem to have too much Geo App for the Lunar Charged Lunar Clouds to maintain an aura for them to play with, is there anyone who can actually form an LC squared team? Well, the answer, thankfully, is yes. And one of those characters is, I think, Navia. Another one might be Ito, but I don't have him. The thing about Navia is that all her damage that happens often also has standard ICD, so they're not too fast in the Geo application. Navia's Geo infused normal attacks after her shotgun, and Navia's ultimate cannon, they all have standard ICD. Her shotgun doesn't have ICD, but you'd only get to use that basically twice per rotation, so that doesn't really matter. So when you put all of that together, we're not seeing any major downtime on the auras on enemies. The Lunar Charge aura sometimes disappears from Navia, but sometimes also the Hydra part of the aura disappears since the Electro aura is stuck behind getting only reacted once a second. So with an effort on the team, and in particular with her ult, Navia would end up getting some EM share from popping that ult. So the Lunar Crystallise Turrets are also doing more damage. Now, the interesting thing about this Navia team is that because we have both Neffa and Columbina, two not quite characters, we now have a couple of options available for Navia's build. Night of the Skies Unveiling, aka the DPS Not Cry set, actually works because you would get the full 30% crit rate. All lunar reaction damage also gets increased by 10%, and Navia would get 80 EM, which further boosts the Lunar Crystallise turret damage. Alternatively, Nighttime of Whispering Woods. Like I mentioned, this is going to work really well with Lunar Crystallise because it's a lot easier to use. This artifact set remains Navia's general best in slot, and so the idea is that even though we're still making Electro Shards, there is now not really a reason to use Navia's hold skill unless you somehow get in too quickly, in which case you could still use it to suck up those Electro Shards. But either way, when it comes to making bullets or when it comes to maintaining the Nighttime of Whispering Woods artifact set bonus, we don't actually have to think about sucking them up anymore. So that's of course really nice. At least for me, according to the simulacrum, my Navia is stronger with the nighttime set, and the Lunar team is in fact a rather significant upgrade to the previous pure DPS Navia team. However, naturally the DPS team will result in some more damage coming out of Navia herself, so the previously described Neffa Columbina wheelchair does in fact seem to be very real, especially with the level of accidental investment that I actually have on them. Now, I've been including Shilinen in all my teams, but I do want to talk briefly about Zhongli. Zhongli is a perfectly solid option as a second Geo as well. He won't shred as much resistance as Shilinen can, but on the flip side though, Zhongli's pillar can resonate with the Lunar Crystallise turrets, resulting in more of what's being dubbed microwave damage. Now, microwave damage isn't particularly high per hit, but when you have a bunch of Geo constructs, including 3 Lunar Crystallise turrets, it can actually multiply quite nicely. I've built my Zhongli for DPS, and I think I'm seeing around 2,500 damage per microwave hit, so when you have a pillar, 3 turrets, hell, even Ningguang's Jade Screen, and they're all resonating and hitting the same enemy, well then that's actually 12.5k off-field damage per wave. It's not a major amount of damage, but it's not nothing, I suppose. Like, hopefully we'll see a Zhongli buff, for example, where resonance damage is significantly stronger against petrified enemies. That would give you a reason to pop his ult. There are some considerations that you would probably need to make when it comes to bringing someone like Zhongli. Ningguang's Jade Screen is already difficult enough to place without immediately breaking when fighting bosses. It'll be even more difficult to place it in a spot where you won't also immediately break it because of the pillar. I really hope, if we ever get Ningguang buffs, first off, lose the cooldown on getting particles, but then secondly, I really hope her Jade Screen integrity is significantly buffed and or fixed, kind of like Albedo's flower, or I guess in his case he also gets a special extra silver flower of some description. In a similar fashion, you would need to place the pillar in a spot where it doesn't immediately break from bosses. Noelle also doesn't need another shield. She will already be using her own shield anyway, as that gives her the ability to team heal as well. That being said though, you will still use Zhongli's shield because otherwise you won't get the res shred from his kit. And Navia would also end up with 3 layers of shields. 3 layers of shield doesn't make a shield that's actually a lot stronger. It just means that when you take damage to those shields, all of the shields actually take damage simultaneously, so it's kind of pointless. You will end up with Zhongli's shield, Neffa's shield, and of course something from Electro Crystallized Shards. So if you need Shilinen somewhere else, then Zhongli seems absolutely perfectly fine. Although according to the simulacrum, somehow it's really only a difference between 79k and 89k DPS, which is kind of surprising when you're comparing him to C2 R1 Shilinen. Oh, and of course, if you're a Chiori player, the Lunar Crystallise Turrets counting as Geo Constructs means you will instantly get your +1 Tamato without needing to get her C1. So if anything, I feel like now is the perfect time for the Navia mates who wanted to get Chiori to wait until the next Chiori rerun, whenever that shows up, and then actually go and get her, because now it's a lot easier to use her. I think that will do it for today's video on Lunar Crystallise. So if you have any questions about other characters, feel free to drop them in the comments. If you like this kind of content, then don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more Genshin Impact action. Otherwise, hope you guys enjoy this, and until next time, I will see you guys later. Thanks for watching. Peace.
Ultimatum